Welcome, everybody, to our podcast, All-Star Insights, everything about youth baseball, sponsored by Kids on First Foundation and Tuckahoe Sports. I'm your co-host, Chris McKnight, along with my co-host,
Coach Rock. Welcome to the show, everyone. Good to see you guys.
And today we have a special guest. Ryan Brownlee has been involved in baseball, I can say his whole life, because his dad was a head coach in college. So probably when he was born, he had baseball going in the crib. And Ryan currently right now is the assistant executive director for the American Baseball Coaches Association. He is focused on coaching education, works with coaches from all over the United States, and we even have some overseas guys in there as well. Former Division I assistant coach and former Division I head coach. So we have a lot of stuff to go over today. And Ryan, we really appreciate you being with us.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Welcome, Ryan. Appreciate you guys.
Yep.
So, like I said in the intro there, Ryan, we're going to start out when you were a kid in youth baseball. Your dad, a successful Division I head coach. What was it like, number one, growing up with a dad in the coaching profession, and kind of take us through your progression in youth baseball?
Yeah, and I had a brother that was 4 years older too. So I kind of learned by actually watching my older brother go through a lot of things. When I was born, Bloomington Normal, Illinois, my dad was assistant baseball coach at Illinois State. And then right after that, his position got cut because of Title IX. So every assistant position in the state of Illinois got cut. So we actually moved to Princeton, Illinois, which is a really small town in central Illinois. And my dad actually coached football, basketball, and then collegiate summer baseball when we lived in Princeton, Illinois. So the old Central Illinois Collegiate League, really back in those days in 74 to 79, it was the Cape League, Alaska, and the CICL really were the only three leagues that were available for players to play in. So, and that was in Galesburg, Illinois. So we would be in Princeton, Illinois during the year, and then in the summertime we would actually move to Galesburg. So we lived with, I think one year we lived in a hotel. When I was a kid, they set up a crib in like a closet in a hotel where we lived. This is a true story. So when I was a baby, like my mom and dad tell this story, like they would put a drape up over the closet that I would sleep in, and they'd be watching TV and I would stick my head out. But then we actually lived with the players one summer too. And so those were kind of my earliest memories of watching baseball, was being a baby, 5 years old, basically, watching collegiate summer league games. And my brother was more involved. My brother was a bat boy. I still could barely walk at that point. But then in 79, we moved to Evansville, Indiana. My dad actually took a pay cut going from high school to college just to really start the baseball program at the University of Evansville. And when we got to Evansville had no field. There was a field there, but it's on campus. It's where the softball stadium is now, but no dugouts, no back, nothing. So my dad basically built this. And those are some of my probably earliest memories, was actually helping my dad work on the field when I was a little kid at Evansville. And so my brother and I grew up there. I still consider Evansville home, even though I haven't lived there. I've lived longer outside of Evansville than I've lived in Evansville, but I do still consider Evansville my home. Played same high school coach that coached Don Mattingly at Memorial High School. A really successful baseball program in Southern Indiana. If you look at that part of the world, that Southern Indiana area is where the most big leaguers have come from. So the Bennis brothers, Scott Rowland, Don Mattingly, Jamie Carroll, and there's some new ones too that have come out of that area. Kyle Freeland played at Evansville. Sal Fasano played at Evansville. It's a really good area for baseball, and you still see it down there. The little leagues are still really strong down in that area. You can drive around that area now in the summertime, and there are youth fields everywhere, and there's kids playing little league still in that area, which you don't see as much anymore. So Played at Evansville for my dad and brother. Wasn't planning on going to Evansville. Nobody in my family wanted me to play for my dad and brother because my brother had just gone through it and saw how hard it was. So nobody wanted me to go to Evansville and play. I looked at the University of Portland, Bradley, Vanderbilt. Denison College is a really good Division III school. I wasn't sure how good I was in high school. Played in a tradition-rich program that had a lot of college and pro guys come out of there, and so you kind of got punched in the mouth a little bit in high school. It just was really competitive, and so I didn't really play every day varsity until my senior year of high school. But lost 4 games. The class that I went through high school with, we only lost 4 games in 4 years.
Wow.
So my class was used to winning. And then we were in the middle of a state championship run my senior year in high school, and I still hadn't decided where I was going to school yet. This is in June. June after I graduated from high school. I still wasn't sure where I was going, and then decided to go to Evansville. And that was probably the best decision I made personally because nobody wanted me to go there. And I think that was the way that it worked best because I had looked at a lot of different schools. And so that was hard for me because I liked every school I looked at. I was really diligent. It was more on the academic side of it than it was the baseball side of it. I thought I'd figure the baseball piece out wherever I went, but I wanted a smaller classroom size. You know, down in Evansville, a lot of people go to Purdue, a lot of people go to IU, some go to Ohio State. So I had friends that went to bigger schools, so I had visited them at school when I was in high school, and I just knew that I was going to get eaten up at a bigger school. And then had a really good career at Evansville, played professionally one summer, but I still wasn't sure what I was going to do. I was not going to coach, kind of like nobody wanted me to go to Evansville. Nobody in my family wanted me to coach because they knew how hard it was. But I had 2 classes left to finish at Evansville, and my dad asked me if I wanted to help coach. And literally within the first week of helping my dad and brother at Evansville, I was like, oh, this is what I want to do.
Yep.
But I don't know what I'd be doing. If I had finished on time, I don't know if would have coached because I wouldn't have gotten that opportunity to take classes and also coach.
Yeah. And it's funny, you know, my dad was a cop and my mom was a teacher. And when I told them that I wanted to coach, like they were like, what do you mean? Like that's a job, like you can get paid to do that. And, you know, I remember
paid is a loose term.
Pay is a loose term. That's
in
true.
The beginning, pay is you went through it, Chris. I was a volunteer for 2 years. I was more of a bartender. You know, luckily the place that I worked at, I never missed a game. I never missed a practice. When I was on the road traveling with the team, I didn't work. And then when I get back home, you know, you think about all the things you did on a Thursday. Evansville, we played at Bosse Field for a long time. For anybody who doesn't know the Evansville area, Bosse Field is one of the oldest stadiums in the United States that's still there. So it's like Wrigley, Fenway, one of the HBCU schools has one down in Alabama. I think that's one of the oldest ones. But Bosse Field is still there. But at that time when I was coaching, Evansville was playing on campus and no lights. So, you know, Thursday night I would work at the bar, would go get done with our games at home, go work at the bar. My bar was open till 3:00 in the morning. So, you know, we'd play a noon doubleheader on Saturday. So I would clean up the bar, go home, get a couple hours of sleep, head to the field for batting practice, do that on Saturday night into Sunday. And then basically on Monday, I would sleep all day when we didn't practice. But I was working probably 6-7 hours of sleep on a weekend from Thursday to Sunday. Just think about all the things that you do back then to make it work. But when I really was like, okay, this is what I want to do, my parents sat me down and said, hey, your lifestyle is going to completely change, which I didn't care. I think those of us that figure out that coaching is a calling, you'll do whatever it takes to stay in it. And it's not easy. And my first paid job at JMU was $9,000. I didn't care. Like I drove 9 hours away for the interview. I just wanted a paid job. But that first fall in Harrisonburg, Virginia, I was doing the math on what rent was going to cost. And I'm like, okay, I might be able to pay rent, but I might not eat. So I actually mopped floors. I mopped floors of the Harrisonburg newspaper at night after I got done with practice. And then a year and a half in, started my master's, was coaching summer ball. Between summer ball, the $9,000, doing laundry for the athletic department, parking for football, I was probably making 25 back in 1999. And, if you start from nothing, 25 grand is a lot of money.
You feel like you're rich.
Yeah.
Facts.
I've slept on couches. I gave plasma. I did a lot of things to stay in it, but I'm not in the position that I'm in right now. If I hadn't done all those things, you try to relay that to coaches too coming out. You don't want people to starve, but you get paid in experience. And really early on, you're going to take jobs that nobody else wants. JMU, when I got there, Evansville was a really successful program when I left. But JMU had lost the most amount of games in school history the year I got there. When I got my job at Iowa, same thing the year before. They had lost the most amount of games in school history. When I got to Western Illinois, they had lost the most amount of games in school history the year before. It's just, early on, it's like you're taking jobs that nobody else wants, but you're also going to turn those into really good places at some point. You got to invest your blood, sweat, and tears into that. I don't think you should ever shy away from taking challenges. It's not for everybody, but I think that's where your lowest hanging fruit is. If you do it right and you build things, I think you can take programs that maybe nobody else wants and turn them into places that people actually want to go to.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think that's one of the things. I know for me, I took a job coming out of high school, 1 year in high school. I thought I knew everything, which, of course, when you're a kid, you think that. And then I got into starting a brand new baseball program at State University in New York at Old Westbury. And I had no clue what I was doing. But, like you said, that makes you stronger and makes you better. I look back now and say, I don't even know how I got through that. That year, starting a program. I didn't know anything about any of that, especially, in college. So, let's.
But the good thing with that is you have a lot of wiggle room at places like that because you can do it however you want. Because really, there's no expectations.
Yeah, no, there were no expectations.
Besides internally, what you have as a competitor and being a competitive person, that's really what you have is what you have as a competitive person to turn it into something good. But there's no outside expectations at all.
Yeah. Ryan, how did you get your guys to actually believe, coming from a history of basically having to redevelop a whole program and get everyone on the same vision and on your same path? How'd you get the locker room to buy in?
It's just daily habits. And that's still something that I talk about to coaches now when I go on the speaking circuit. It's really just those daily habits. When you look at programs that are really successful and then ones that aren't successful, there's a lot of common themes within programs that are successful. And it really is the daily processes that they have built up. So that's like going to class. That's a big place. You have a program that's really successful. Those guys are doing what they need to be doing or girls are doing what they need to be doing in the classroom. So that's really the first place that we would start is time management's a big one. People that are successful have good time management skills. People that are not successful have terrible time management skills. The world just piles on top. People that don't have good time management skills, the world just piles on top of them because they're flying by the seat of their pants every day rather than setting up, okay, at 9 a.m., I know I got to be here. At noon, I've got to be here. I've got to mix in when I eat. It's really those small daily habits. So getting to class on time, getting to weights on time, drinking enough water, eating enough food, getting enough sleep. If you can get on top of, and I think as adults, it's the same thing too. If you can manage your sleep, your water intake, your nutrition, your exercise, if you can get on top of those things, I think it lines you up. Now it's not easy, and people call it discipline, but as much as I've been studying it over the years now, it's not discipline. It's basically building daily habits. People talk about discipline, but you only have a certain amount of energy that you can give every day. And usually people that really focus on discipline, they get worn out by the end. And so those habits will break down. but it really is about building daily habits. And we called it pride, personal responsibility, and daily excellence. And those are the small things that you have to focus on, because if you focus on the big picture at that point, when you get to those places, it's too overwhelming for kids. It is. Because they've never done it. So, we called them small wins, and some people talk about making their bed. Those are small things that you can have people do that are daily habits that maybe they don't have, that they can start, because that's a win. And you're trying to stack those small wins with people that have never really had success or win or have won. It's trying to build in those daily wins for them, because then you build some confidence off that. And it might be just making your bed every morning. You do that for 2 weeks, and then you can move on to the next habit.
Yeah, definitely.
I need you to. You're gonna have to talk to my wife, man, because she's on top of all that, 100%.
I'm big into neuro rewiring exercises. Like I know it's weird, but you have to basically train your brain to build new habits easier. So like brush your teeth with opposite hand. A big one. I don't wear a watch, but you guys wearing a watch right now?
No, sir.
Yeah.
Put it on your other wrist. I'm gonna teach you something. Put your watch on your other wrist.
Okay.
Again, this is a neural rewiring exercise that I'll have people do. The first day I did this, I read this article. The first day I did this, it took me a half hour to switch it to the other side, and I left it on all day. Chris, I challenge you to leave it on all day. Leave your watch on the other wrist all day. I challenge you to try to do it.
Okay.
Because it's going to feel really weird. But that also tells you, and this goes into when you're asking players to make adjustments too. Anytime you try to make someone an adjustment, it's going to feel awkward, but that's actually a good thing, because that's your brain actually rewiring new pathways.
Yep. Yeah. So
Chris, I'm sure you're very aware right now that your wrist is on, your watch is on the other wrist.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm looking at it right now.
To piggyback on that. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, no, let's talk about a little bit now your transition. You were an assistant coach for a number of years in college,
15.
And now you get your first head coaching job in college. So talk about that transition a little bit, and your some of the good things that you found, but also some of the pitfalls that you encountered at making that transition.
I also took a pay cut. I took a pay cut going from recruiting coordinator, head assistant at Iowa to head coach at Western Illinois. I took a pay cut, but 15 years it was time. I think I would have stayed an assistant. I really liked it, but I think you get to that point in your career where you feel like it's time to start doing all the things that you want to do. And I think as an assistant, you have to be loyal to your head coach, and those behind closed door meetings. Things can get heated sometimes, but once the door opens and you go out as a staff, then it's whatever the head coach wants to do, you have to be on board with, and you have to make their life easier. I think that's probably the biggest advice I can give to assistant coaches is your job is to make your head coach's life easier. And so, Pat Casey and I talked about that on the podcast that came out today. Pat Casey was at Oregon State, won 3 national championships, but he talked about Pat Bailey. Pat Bailey was a really good assistant coach at Oregon State. Anything that Pat Casey didn't want to do, Pat Bailey was good at and would take off his plate. And I tell assistants that, I'm like, whatever your head coach, or it might be in the real world, whatever your boss doesn't like to do that, because you will always have a job. Because now you have value. So we had just got done with fall ball at Iowa. The Western Illinois job came open. The guy that was there couldn't handle it there. He took a medical sales job with Stryker and is doing really well now with Stryker. He just wasn't built for there. So I called Mike and I said, hey, just lay it out for me. And all the stuff that he was complaining about, I was like, that's not that big a deal to me. Like whatever he didn't like about that job, it seemed fine to me. And it was things that I thought were kind of in my sweet spot that we could get done. So go over interview. I had 2 fall balls that fall, one at Iowa, one at Western Illinois. I had the assistants there hold off on doing fall baseball because I knew I was probably going to take the job, but they held off. So I ran another fall with Western. My family stayed in Iowa City. I slept in my office for 9 months. I had to pull out couch in my office at Western Illinois. I actually slept because we couldn't afford two places. I don't even know if that was legal. I felt bad for the cleaning crew because I'd be sleeping and they'd try to come in my office at like 2 a.m. I'd be like, I'm in here. So I slept on a pull-out couch for 9 months. But that actually was a benefit because I could get up in the morning. I could go get in town, meet with people, kind of build some bridges in town with people. And I would go back and do that again too, because I think it worked out better. I was more available for our players because my family wasn't there. I really felt like it put us in a better position because I was by myself, could really focus on the work part of it. But then Iowa City is only 2.5 hours away from Western, so I could get back to see my family as needed.
Yeah.
Wasn't easy, but it actually probably made it better going forward. But it's the same thing. What I dealt with at Western Illinois was the same stuff we dealt with at Iowa. Kids not going to class. Kids basically signing up to go to a Division I school, but didn't really want to sign up for the lifestyle of a Division I school. And I know everybody does it differently. I didn't really cut anybody. I thought we had pretty good players. The staff that was there before me at Western did a pretty good job recruiting. But recruiting and developing are two different things. Getting them there, but then investing the time in them for them to be really good students and baseball players, those are two completely different things. And I think the coaches that can do both can recruit and also develop. They're a really special breed because I kind of equate it to professional baseball a little bit that way. I always feel like there's a disconnect between the scouts and the player development people on the pro side where you have to try to marry all those things. And I think that's where college has it right because the scouts are the player development people. So whoever's, if you take college as like the draft, signing days, the draft, there's that disconnect because the people that actually signed those players, they're the ones that are actually developing those players once they show up. And I always felt like if pro orgs wanted to tweak that a little bit, I think you could to get more out of the players that you sign is the scouts also are in the player development, and the player development people are also in the drafting process. I think that's not why not as many people make it. It's hard to make it to the big leagues, but I think you would get more people to the big leagues if you had more of a marriage with the scouting and the player development side. And I think some orgs are starting to do that a little bit more. I think the Guardians do it. I think the Rays do it. I think some pro orgs are starting to do that more. But I didn't know what we were going to look like that first spring at Western. Our schedule was challenging. We opened up with Arkansas as number 1 in the country. Then we went to Arkansas State, played at Michigan, played at Minnesota. I look at our schedule as like we might be 0-22 before we go into conference play. Seriously. And
Wow.
I told this story last week in New Jersey on the panel that we did for the Garden State Clinic. We go to Arkansas Friday. We get there on Thursday. We practice that night, and it's fine because nobody's around. But for BP, there's 5,000 people in the stadium already just for batting practice. And our BP guys are having a hard time getting through BP and throwing strikes because everybody's stressed. I'm hitting in and out, and I've coached in a lot of big places, so I was not nervous at all. I was excited. People call it anxiety. I call it excitement. I was excited to tee it up, but the pitcher for in and out, for people who don't know, when you're hitting in and out, it's probably a pitcher that's handing you the baseballs. He was so nervous he couldn't get me the balls. So it looked like an Easter egg hunt. Like there was like 15 balls scattered around our catchers because the pitcher couldn't even get me the ball. I'm like, we've got no shot. So we got our doors blown off on Friday. And then Saturday was a little bit more competitive, but then Sunday we beat them. And that's the cool thing with college baseball is probably the 288th team in the country went in and beat the number 1 team in the country on Sunday just because we played better. And that's all that, Coach Rock, that's what you went back to too. Like that's those small things that you have to get your players to buy into is if you just focus on playing good baseball, so throwing strikes, playing catch, situational hitting when you need to. If you can focus on those things and do them well, you get a chance to beat anybody in baseball, and that's the great thing with baseball.
Yeah, awesome.
how did you like handle 32 guys being drafted from your pedigree, man? I think that's an awesome and a memorable thing that you actually established. So, can you talk to the youth and the parents that may be listening to this as far as how you got those guys to transition to another level?
Yeah, it really is just those small daily habits. And they've got to have some ability. But I think the neat thing about places like that I was at is you weren't going to get the best players in the recruiting process. And sometimes it's honestly better that way, because I was one of those guys that had a hard time getting on the field in high school, and then was an All-American my junior year and played in the Cape, and broke a bunch of school records at Evansville offensively. So I was kind of one of those players. So as an evaluator, it's different now with the portal and some of what they're dealing with now. It is a little bit different now. But back then, you really could take a player that if they had a skill set in high school that you could work with and frame and something to add strength on, they were going to end up turning out to be okay, as long as they were willing to put the work in. And I think that's always the X factor with high school kids going to any level of college or pro baseball, is how hard they're willing to work and really put the time in on their own. There's some common themes with the guys that got a chance or made it. Is honestly, they were great teammates. Like, I didn't have one player that got a chance to play professional baseball that wasn't a good teammate in college. They were all good teammates. Some of the guys that I have that are really successful coaches now still that are done playing, they were great teammates. Two of them, we had two. I don't pick the assistant coaches of the year, the head coaches of the year, but I get the list afterwards. But two of my former players were two assistant coaches of the year, one high school and one in junior college. But you know what? They were great teammates. And they were willing to put the time in. I think the other thing with successful people is they are willing to do the small things that nobody sees, but not because they have to, because they want to, and they're passionate about it. Like, they enjoy the what I think an average person considers mundane or boring. A highly successful person views that as exciting, and they can be competitive with it, and they enjoy it. And I do think they have that innate ability to turn something that might be somebody thinks is mundane, but they'll attack it and be really good at it too. So, and that's been kind of the common theme for all those players that made it, is they were willing to do things that other people weren't. And they are wired different. Successful people are wired different. I mean, you can go down. I don't care if it's sports, musicians, actors, business people, they are wired different for success. Now, they're odd in certain ways. I think, you can look at Steve Jobs was odd in other ways. Jeff Bezos is odd. Elon Musk is odd. But they're really good because they can center in and focus when they need to.
Yeah, it's funny you say that too, because one of my guys that was, again, you got to have talent, no doubt.
Yes,
you got to have that. But he was a catcher for me, and he was like after his junior year, all this, all conference, all that, and he was at the end of practice, he'd be the dude with the rake behind home plate. I mean, making sure it was perfect. Like, his area was perfect. And other guys would be like, well, he's an upperclassman. Why is he doing it? It's not because he looked at it as, oh, it's menial, because that was his area. That was his domain. And he wound up, playing 7-8 years in pro ball, getting up to AAA with the Mariners, won the Mariners award for the top player in the minor leagues. And I look at that, and you look back, like what you said, the little things,
I guarantee he had no problem showing up for early work in pro ball. Those are long days, professional baseball players, long days, especially the catchers. I'm sure in spring training, he caught every bullpen they asked him to do, and did it like it was his job, and loved doing it. I'm sure his pitchers in the minor leagues loved him, because he probably would catch every side set if they wanted him to.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about now. So you're coaching at Western Illinois. The ABCA job comes up, and you look at that and tell us about the transition from coaching now. And you still are coaching in effect, right? Because you are coaching the coaches now, and the ABCA, and you do a great job with, getting out, and the outreach of the ABCA is awesome. Like, if people aren't a member of the ABCA, like, they're missing out. If you're a
I just
coach,
think it's the best $75 you can spend for
yeah,
yourself.
100%.
Even if you're a
So
mom
talk
and
a little
dad
bit
trying
about
to
that
get into it,
transition.
even if you're a mom and dad that's trying to get in it for the first time with the resources that we have and that we're continuing to have to put out on the U side, we're getting ready to roll a lot of really good stuff out on the U side. That's going to be free for anybody. You don't even have to be a member. So yeah, this is the summer of 19. Spring of 19 was my last spring coaching. So this is the summer of 19. Had gone through recruiting all summer, and Andrew Bartman had just left the ABCA office to go to USA Baseball, and then Jeremy Sheetinger had been in the office and took the Georgia Gwinnett job. And I had been a member for 22 years, and I had been to a convention when I was a kid. I think 14. I was 14. Went to convention with my parents in New Orleans, so I had actually been to the ABCA convention as a kid. So I mean, I'd gone to plenty of conventions. I voted in the USA Today Top 25 poll, which is as part of the ABCA. So we line up the Division I coaches. So every conference has a head coach that votes in the USA Today poll. So I had been doing that. So I'd done a few things on the side for them. I had spoke in 2012 in Anaheim on the main stage. So I had been a part of it, but I knew the job was going to be really good. I didn't really think about getting out of coaching, but I just knew that the job in this office was going to be really good. So in August, right before school was getting ready to start, I come out, I fly out, interview, have a really good interview, and then I'm going to take the job. So the really only hard part was meeting with the team to tell them I was leaving, just because I spent a lot of time with those guys. I was a head coach, but I was also very heavily involved with the recruiting because I didn't have a full-time assistant at Western Illinois. So I was still really involved. Even though I was a head coach, I was still involved with a lot of the assistant stuff too. So that was really the only hard part, was sitting down with the guys, let them know I was leaving. But they got it. I think kids understand. Like, they knew what the job was that I was leaving for. But I was still there. I was there for 5 weeks before I moved out to North Carolina, because we were running Barnstormers events. And I told my boss here, I was like, hey, I can't just like pack up in September and leave my family. I've already done that a couple of different times. I was like, I just can't. I got to make it smoother for them this time. But it was fine because we had a bunch of Barnstormers close that I could just drive to from Macomb. And then I think in the end of October, I moved out to North Carolina. I actually lived with Andrew Bartman. Talk about the things you do for baseball. I didn't get my own place. I actually lived with Andrew Bartman and his family. In October, November, December, came back for Christmas, and then the convention was in Nashville that year, so drove from Macomb to Nashville, and then after that, the world shut down. And, COVID was hard, but there were some benefits for me personally because we shut our office down, so I could go to Illinois then, get everybody packed up, and moved everybody out here in June of 2020. And we've been here ever since. But, there's been things that I've added on as we've gone. I think that's part of evolving in any career, is you're adding new things every year to do. So like in the beginning, it was podcasting, Barnstormers, run the youth stage. Back then my committees were high school youth, travel, diversity. But now since then, I've picked up Division II, Division III, NAIA, junior college. So I've continued to add some things on. Have added on, some of the technical stuff, web design. There's been some things that I've added that I didn't have to have as a coach, but on the side that you have to have as a skill set. And I think that's part of your life journey as a human, is continuing to evolve and add things. I always look at Jerry Weinstein. If you don't know Jerry Weinstein in the baseball world, look up Jerry Weinstein. He's 85 years old. He still works with the Cubs.
Still bouncing everywhere.
He spoke at Sac State for us in November, and he's showing new drills that he just picked up. Like, he's 85 and is showing new drills. They're throwing Nerf footballs, and there's like, he's a shining example of like what you should be as a human, because he's continued to evolve even as an 85-year-old. He's reading a book on fascia a year ago.
That's wild. Real,
But I do
real
feel
quick, Ryan.
fortunate. I tell people that all the time. I'm really fortunate at the job that I'm in. I don't take that for granted. I feel like it's a one-of-one job in the baseball industry because you're involved with the pro on down to moms and dads that are coaching for the first time. And I still do some youth camps. So I'm still, I still really like working with 5, 6, 7-year-olds, 9-year-olds. I do really like that side of it too because it's still fresh in their eyes.
You were a second baseman, right? You were
Yeah, I
infield,
played a
middle
little bit of
infielder, right?
outfield, but mostly second base.
So can you kind of tell the youth and the parents as far as what are one of the drills you would talk about? Because we would talk about soft hands
Yep.
and staying behind the ball on certain balls that you play. Kind of enlighten the listeners on key principle of mechanics that a second baseman or middle infielder should hone in on.
Yeah, I did upload a youth practice. We have a YouTube channel, so if you're looking for free youth resources, go to the ABCA YouTube channel. I filmed with a 12U team, so there's a bunch of different drills on there, especially for coaches that are trying to run a practice plan. We have a hard copy practice plan in the My ABCA app, but I took that practice plan and actually put it in video form. So I think it's 19 videos. I think any coach at any level could probably take some bits and pieces out of that practice plan that's on there, those 19 videos. The difference for me at second base is they are going the opposite direction on some of their double play feeds. So, and if you talk about fielding where it's right, left, get rid of it when we're going to first base, it's the opposite when we're going to second base. So the left foot's going to land first. So I think that's one of those finer teaching points on double play feeds with second basemen, and to have rhythm and athleticism with their double play feeds is the left foot's going to land first. But it's about, in this area, it's cool because we have pro coaches that come in. They are still trying to get their minor league defenders to take prep steps and get ready on every pitch. Like I think when you get down to the simplest form of teaching defenders, prep steps, like on every pitch, people think that's easy. It's really hard because you're going to, especially at the youth level, it's probably 200 pitches in a game. If you play a 6-inning game and it's probably 200 pitches now with guys not being able to throw strikes or girls not being able to throw strikes. So just simple prep steps on every pitch that's thrown is a great place to start for defenders, but they're still dealing with it at the pro level, trying to get their infielders to do it on every.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, the left foot comes into play a lot more for the second baseman because they're going the opposite direction on their double play feeds.
Yeah. I'm a huge toe guy, left toe guy. That toe has the land.
Yeah, love it. And that was something that we didn't pay as much attention to early on, that I think coaches now are doing a much better job of making sure that heel's planted, but the left or right foot's not planting until they're ready to catch. And I think that's a great adjustment on if you're doing short hop stuff, of making sure if we're going right, left field, that the left toe ball foot's off the ground until they're ready to catch the ball. Keeps them much better athletic. That way they don't get stuck.
Yeah.
Right.
Just that little thing right there, I think, is going to clean up their rhythm and working through the ball. I think it cleans it. Just that small thing right there of the foot being off the ground where they're on the heel and then planting. I think just that thing right there cleans up a lot of their athleticism fielding.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan, for that.
So we talked a little bit about now the youth climate, and if there was one thing, Ryan, that you could say if we're to the national bodies across baseball, because there's so many, the ABCA definitely is the leading one, the USA Baseball, and then there's
Major League
Little League
Baseball,
Baseball, Babe Ruth Baseball. There's so many different ones. What's like the one thing, if you could change for youth baseball, what would that be?
Universal tracking number for every player that plays. So as soon as a player, a boy or girl, goes into the system, they get a universal tracking number. So other sports have this. So, whether they sign up for Little League or whatever their first touch point is, it might be minor leagues, Little Leagues, they get a universal tracking number that now stays with them because it's safer, because now you're not getting their information. So they have a universal tracking number that stays with them until they finish playing. So I think it cleans a lot of things up that we see with the once they start pitching. I think once a kid gets a universal tracking number, now no matter what tournament they play in, we know exactly how many pitches they've thrown in any tournament. It could be a side tournament, but like I think the universal tracking number cleans a lot of the birth date issues up that we have with the different leagues. I think a universal tracking number for every player that plays baseball cleans a lot of the issues up that we're dealing with youth and travel baseball right now.
Yeah.
So that would be the first place to start.
Yeah. And how hard do you think that would be to implement across the country?
I don't think it's that hard. It's just getting all the organizations on board and then figuring out how we're going to actually attack that and what system we're going to use to do it. That's like the logistical piece of that. Like where's all that going to be housed? And then how do we disseminate the information to everybody? But this is the greatest time for technology to be able to attack something like that. In the old days, we wouldn't have been able to do this, but now with technology, like we can easily do this.
AI
Devin Morgan at Driveline's working on it. He's on our youth and travel, so he's one of the smartest people on that side of things. And Driveline does a really good job on some of that stuff. And then Game Changer. I mean, almost everybody uses Game Changer. So is it something like Game Changer, where now that universal tracking number follows that boy or girl that every event they play in or league they sign up for? It just follows.
Yeah. And now with the changes, like you just said, the new technology and AI's coming into the picture now for baseball. So what's your take on that?
I think it's good. Like I think it's coming. I had a good buddy, Scott Riefner. He's in Charlotte. He used AI for his 12 and 13U team to write lineups and scouting reports. He had a great year.
Wow.
He had a great year. And he's coaching high school now. But like he used AI for scouting reports, and now they're basic stuff, but he used it for lineup changes. He did it, and this was a year ago he was using it.
What do you think of what about those umpires that are kind of somewhat be obsolete behind the plate with this whole AI calling balls and strikes, man? Like
Kevin Coe runs the Reds youth organization. They use the automated umpire for their fields. So they actually came, I think it was Major League Baseball came to them and said, well, you put it in. So they had AI, they had the robo umpire behind home plate. You still got to have somebody back there for fair foul calls.
Right.
There's still got to be somebody back there. Just got to make sure you keep them safe. That's always been my issue. If we don't have to block as much, if it's not as important about keeping the ball in front on some plays, are we going to get some umpires banged up back there? But yeah, it's coming. If you think about a tournament event provider, you don't have to hire as many umpires then. We're running into umpire issues now because sorry parents out there, you need to handle umpires better. We have a shortage because parents and coaches haven't handled umpires right. I'm sorry. Like I was a Division I coach and I didn't say one word when I went and watched my son or daughter play a game. Not one. I'm sure the parents thought I was weird, but I didn't say anything because I think you've got to put yourself in somebody else's shoes sometimes with that. So we are running into umpiring shortages. I think it's a way to clean up some of the umpire shortages if computers calling ball and strikes. But by the way, and Kevin, I said, Kevin, how was it with the parents? He's like, it's fine because you can't argue with it. Can't argue with a computer.
That's right.
Yeah, and it's true what you said about the umpire shortages too. And
yes.
I remember looking back. I had to talk to when I was the chair of the rules committee. I had a guy. One of my jobs was to talk to all the umpires.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna lie. I mean, there was a couple of times I got into it. When I was coaching with umpires, and then the one year I'm sitting there, there's all these umpires out there, and then I gotta talk to them. But when you put yourself in their shoes, and I listened to them and what some of their complaints were about coaches, because I saw all the reports then when they came in, if they had to eject somebody, and then you put yourself in their shoes, it changes your perspective 100%.
Tim Cordell is an ex-division. I think he still does Division I games, but he runs a lot of the youth umpiring stuff in Kansas City. they've done some really good things with umpires meeting with the teams and the parents before the game, just to go over things. And I think some of it is just some people just don't know.
Yeah.
Where I think we have to educate people on the front end of that, where, yeah, Tim's done a really good job and has really not eliminated, but they've done a good job of curtailing some of that by having the umpires meet with the parents and players and the coaches pregame as a group, just to go over like expectations. And I think you deal with that. Coach Rocky talked about, like, I would send a parent letter out preseason when I was at Western to our parents, just explaining like our expectations of them and how to handle things, just as guidelines to make it easier on their players, because kids aren't going to say anything to their parents. Like, I think as a coach, you have to set guidelines for your parents in your program. Like, this is what we expect of you and how we expect you to handle yourself during games and in between games, after games. I think you have to set those guidelines and expectations for your parents, because if not, then it's the wild, wild west.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's not
Most travel ball.
They just don't know.
Yeah. I think most travel ball organizations in this region, from my experience, have established those rules of conduct
Yes.
for parents and players in those contracts that they sign.
Yes.
So if you breach that, you can no longer be on the team,
Yes.
things of that nature.
Yep.
So, yeah, I've seen that language starting to be implemented. But I did have a quick question. At what point does an umpire age out? Because
as long as they love it, like, they can keep. As long as they can see.
I don't. You know what, Ryan? I don't know, man, because there have been some umpires.
I know, but if
that literally
that's the
have
only
walked
body
up with
available,
walkers. They got walkers, man. Like,
I know, but if that's the only body available for that game, then we got to roll it out there.
I know, I get it. No, I'm just,
I think that I really do think, though, the ABS system is gonna in 2 or 3 years. I think you're gonna see that at tournaments. I think little leagues would be foolish not to adopt that now with all the technology it's out. Have the umpire stand behind the mound, have an earpiece and whatever. I think all those things are going to help the game. Number one, move the game along, but number two, eliminate those arguments or the coaches, like you said, Ryan, they can't argue with the computer. And it's going to be just, because the shortage of umpires, because umpire costs just keep going up because they got to do something to attract, the umpire. So I think all that stuff, just like technology and anything, most of it's good. There are some technologies maybe, that aren't great, but in the end, most of the time it's beneficial for the uses.
Yes, for sure.
So, hey, Ryan, I really appreciate, your time today. We could spend another hour at least, talking about this stuff.
It's the same thing that happens on our podcast. Like, you get in, you look up, it's like you're an hour in.
Yeah, we're like an hour into it already. I'm like, holy goodness.
That's the great thing with baseball is you can go forever.
You can just go. Yeah. No, we'll definitely have you back on. And I'm looking forward to, seeing you in Columbus this year, the ABCA conventions in Columbus. Yeah. Hasn't been there in a while, right?
January 8th to 11th. Never. This is the first time ever, Columbus. So January 8th through the 11th. Get there. Get there. It is Disneyland for baseball.
Yep, 100%. I tell everybody all the time. They said if you can go and get to one of these, I spend at least, and this is my 30-something year. I don't know. I forget. As a member, and every time I go, my wife looks at me. You go. We're going to the convention because she likes going too. Looking at all the new stuff every year. It's amazing. It's like Christmas for coaches.
It is. And you get to see all the new stuff. And, we have so many things available, whether youth travel, high school, pro coach, there's something available for everyone to get better. And some of it's just reaffirming what you're doing.
Yeah. 100%. I go every year.
Or, I like that. We haven't added that in. That's something new I can add in. But a lot of it's reaffirming what you're doing, just to know that, hey, I'm on the right path here.
100%. Yeah. No, it's amazing. Like I need a vacation after I go to the ABCA because you're up till 12, 1 o'clock in the morning talking about stuff and meeting people. Yeah, you haven't seen. So yeah, anybody that's listening that is not, and even if you can't make it, like Ryan said, you can get on and the resources that are available, just the partner resources are great. So, and if you're in Virginia, which is even better, you can sign up for the VBCA and ABCA for the same price, for $75. So yeah, it's kind of a no-brainer. But Ryan, really thank you
guys
for taking the time out today. It was awesome, awesome show. And thanks everybody for tuning in again. All-Star Insights, sponsored by Kids on First Foundation and Tuckahoe Sports. And we'll catch you next time.
Bye, guys.
Awesome.